is Arafat. He's an engineer at SourceGraph. His talk is about artificial intelligence and how open source artificial intelligence is rewriting the rulebook. I don't know which rulebook. I hope he's going to explain which rulebook is going to be rewritten. I don't know, maybe Game of Thrones. There is a rulebook in there. I don't think so. If you're ready, Arafat, is going to be a TikToker, I think. Perfect. So I leave you the stage, Arafat. Can you give an applause for him, please? Thank you.
All right, so can people hear me? I suppose they can. That is lovely. All right, all right. Let's do the slideshow. All right. So today, first of all, very nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming all the way here. Today the topic of conversation, the thing I'm going to be talking about is flipping the script, how open source AI is changing the game for everyone. So what does that mean, right? So before that, I'll talk about myself a bit because I would very much like it if you know who I was. I'm Era. You can call me Era as in the beginning of an era. I'm an AI engineer at SourceGraph. I love the winter sports, play a lot of winter sports, skiing, snowboarding, ice skating, everything under sky. I'm Canadian, so that explains a lot of things. I'm also a history buff, love to learn about history. Huge fan of World War II era history, any other kind of history too, and that explains why I'm here. I'm also a traveler. I've been to many countries, lived in 4 continents and 5 or 6 countries. Keep nomading around, so if you have any ideas, any grand trips, you know, feel free to share with me. This is a photo of one of the very good backcountry ski trips I did last year. And then this is like another photo of one of the backcountry hiking trips we did last year. But anyway, let's get back to the talk. I want to make a promise to you. And the promise is very simple. Everything I show you today can be replicated in less than 1 hour on your own machine. Warning, this can change your life, hopefully for the better. So all right, let's start with something rather simple. All right. All right. So. Oh, yeah, no, but just give me 1 second. I would. All right, I think people can see my screen. And we do this allow thing. And it shows me. And then I do this. And I do explain. And then I submit. So please, demo gods, be on my side. Are you? Yeah, they are. OK. The image shows a man wearing a red jacket with a microphone in front of him. He is looking at the camera and appears to be speaking or engaging with the audience. This man is also wearing a hat, adding to his cool and confident demeanor. Jesus Christ, bro, you know me too well. Behind this is a projection screen displaying information or visuals related to his speech or presentation. Can we vouch that this was a mostly accurate description? I would say so, right? Guys, say hi, say hi. All right, so let's try that one. Except this time, we'll turn off the Wi-Fi just to see how that goes. The image shows a large group of people sitting in chairs and waving. Appears to be a gathering or even possibly a conference or presentation. People are wearing red wristbands, which might indicate they're part of the team or organization. The chairs have been arranged in rows, and people are seated next to each other, creating a sense of unity and shared experience among the attendees. This works pretty well. Works just on my machine, without any Wi-Fi, any internet, nothing. This fully open source model runs perfectly fine on my machine. And eventually, I'll be sharing how this works and how the code for this works with you guys as time goes on. But like, as you see, I turned off the Wi-Fi, so you know it definitely works on my machine. Full disclosure, I have an M3 Max Pro, and that's a subtle way of saying I'm rich. But to be fair, it might work on like other devices too. So this was like a classic example. What we did here, was basically we had like a visual input, and we converted it to text, like basically near real time, using open source AI without making any third-party call that lives outside of your computer. So even if you had an air-gapped machine, theoretically something like this would work. And that brings me back, like the whole point of this demo was just to get your attention. Like I'll get to the actual thing later. But I have a question for the audience. It's like, how many of you are aware of tools like ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude? Just raise your hands. All right, how many of you use them in day-to-day programming? How many of you use them for just about anything, like literally just about anything you do, like cooking? All right, so we've got a few of those. So the intent of this conversation is like getting the third number really high, is like getting normal people to use it for just about anything. And also for making it possible for people to realize that they can have all these tooling in like fully, easily accessible open source they can deploy on their own machines for whatever problems they have, and they don't necessarily have to be living within the constraints of the fact that a lot of stuff that comes out from OpenAI, Anthropic, and the other many decent companies who are, again, very nice, but like you can't really use them because we work in environments where there's compliance, there's other regulations. So basically, like when I want people to think of like machine learning and like artificial intelligence language models, I think of it in terms of a matrix of possibilities. And a matrix of possibilities is this idea that like you have a modality meaning like an input data form, and it could be, say, a video form, it could be a text form, it could be an audio form, it could be an image form. And in any of these formats, as you see in this diagram, you can convert one form to the other. So if you have a video, you can convert it to, say, a video that's more flashy. If you have a video, you can have a conversion to text. If you have text, you can make a video out of text. There's models for that out there right now. You can convert an audio to video. So you have all these modalities, and the promise of AI is that you can at least do this one-to-one conversion from one modality to the other, which again is like, from the sounds of it, it's like, cool, whatever. But like, how do I, like, if I have these possibilities, like, what do I do with this? Like, what do I do with the knowledge that there exists a model out there that can do these things for me? So for example, first of all, do I even know that these modalities actually exist somewhere? And second of all, if they do exist, like how do I make use of them? So I'll give you a classic example. Say you do want to find like modalities, like for example, you want to figure out, I made a reference to quite a few modalities, like text to speech, speech to video, all these kind of stuff. So one of the classic places where you can find out a lot of open source stuff to straight up try out any of these modalities is Hugging Face. It's a very standard website where you can find all kinds of AI projects. So let's say you want to try a modality like, say, text to speech. So you go on Hugging Face, you look at the task, you select the modality of text to speech. So let me pick. So this is, I've been told it's a good model. And right away, you can just select a model and you can try an inference. Inference is the idea that you give an input to a model and it gives you an output. So like, what is a good conversation? Let's try that one. So it does a computation.
What is a good conversation?
So yeah, so right away, like you see a model, you see a modality, you can try it out. And what that means is like, basically, every single modality that I showed you here, theoretically, you can just go on Hugging Face for free right away, try it out, and then you're good to go. But it's not just that you can try it out. That would be too simple. So what you can also do is that right below they have this like simple code to just straight up plug and play into your app, project, whatever it is you're building. At a certain point, the price could be like too high, and that's a factor that you have to worry about later. But in the early stage of development, if you just want to try out and put pieces together and be like, I'm trying to make sure, does this even work? Is this idea in my head a realistic thing, or am I just making things up? This is like a very fast way to like prototype and put like puzzle pieces together so that like any person can just use models. And as for whether or not you can use them, there's like versioning, licensing, all that kind of stuff which you can find here. There's also this kind of model rating mechanism of like how much likes does it, how many downloads does it have, and that kind of helps you figure out like what kind of model you can use for any modality. Now the other project that really helps with open source models is Llama. Llama is again a very interesting project in the sense that OpenLlama has a very separate promise that not only can you use these open source language models, you can download them and run them on your own machine. And that's very interesting. So if you go on OpenLlama, you go on these models, and you can just download them and run them on your machine. So just to prove that this is not a fraud, I will run them, some of them, show you something cool on like my machine. So let's try Llama list. And if I try Llama list, let me try this model, Llama run Mixtral. I am trying Mixtral because it's one of the best AI companies, and it's also a European company. Yeah, it's a pretty cool company. So the whole model should work. It takes a while to load. Okay. What is a sunny day in Florence, or whatever? I don't know if yeah. Okay. So sunny day in Florence characterized by clear blue skies with sun shining brightly. Blah 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 blah. So it's a model that runs without the internet perfectly on my own machine. And as an extension, there's quite a few other models also that run perfectly fine. So there's a model called Llama. The purpose of Llama is like it can convert an image to text, and I already showed you a model that does text to text. So like I said a lot of things now, but like it's okay. It's okay to say a lot of things, but like what is the utility of everything I said? So let me give you an example of like a utilitarian example of like a lot of what I said till now. So let's say you go to So the thing is, like, one of my classic issues is that, like, I tend to, like, mess around a lot when I'm coding, and I'm just not, like, I'm, like, ADHD on steroids, but, like, so I have to have, like, this app, and this app is, like, it's called Coach. It's a thing that I use is built by a friend, and basically the idea of Coach is that, like, you can give Coach a target, and then it watches you, and it's like your coach is, like, watching you. So let me just, actually show you how that works. So. Okay, wait. All right. Python Coach, goal, work on a coding project. So I start Coach. Let's see if it's even running. Where's my logging not? Okay, the Coach is running. Now, as any as a very diligent programmer, I'll do the smart thing, which is I'll go on Twitter, right? Because that's what diligent programmers do. Instead of programming, they go there. And as soon as you go here, it says, current activity involves interacting with the channel which is not directed to a coding project, right? Thanks, Coach. But he's reminding me not to use Twitter. But I'm so smart, I would never listen to it. So like, I'll keep using Twitter, and it's like, current activity involves using social media which is not directed to the coding project. So this is like a thing where basically, like, as you're using your computer, if you're like messing around, not coding, whatever, like it will keep complaining, making a system call and showing you. So there's like also this like very cool extension of this where it's like you can hook this up to Slack, and then basically like I could go to my company Slack, and then every time I'm messing around, it will send a message to my company Slack, yo, Era is like kind of messing around, not programming. But then I realized like I don't want to get fired so soon, like it's not healthy. So like I'll keep my indulgences to myself. So how does this work, right? How does this work? This is like a simple thing, open source, works the entire pipeline works through and through, just on your machine. By the way, it's still running. It just actually believes that I'm programming, and that's why it doesn't yell at me. So yeah, so how does this actually work? So the way this works is like every couple of minutes, it takes a screenshot. The screenshot goes here. So these are just like different screenshots of like me doing different stuff. Yeah, and it takes a screenshot every couple minutes. And then what it does is like, let me, where's the stuff? All right, so it takes a screenshot every couple of minutes. Then it sends a screenshot to this model that I showed you before, which is like Llama. And the purpose of Llama model is that it will take an image and convert it to text. So if the screenshot shows you, hey, this person is using Twitter and wasting their time, that is what the text would be from the screenshot. And then it will send it to another model, which is like Mixtral, which is a model I showed you before. So it does like this two-step thing. It converts an image to text, and then it sends a text to another text model to do some kind of filtering of like, is this text corresponding to the task that this person said they will do? And if not, then we have to tell them. So, and then you have to do some kind of data processing using Pydantic. Pydantic is like a data processing tool which helps you get like a standard structured format that you can use. And then based on the Boolean response of like, is the person actually doing what they said they'll do, then it will like give you like a true or false value. And then the value from Pydantic is like used to make a system call down the line. So that way, like you have this like, again, it's like a very simple app, but like an extension of this app could be something much, much better. So something like, imagine if you have something that takes like a screenshot of everything you're doing for, say, the entire day. And then you can kind of query it and ask it questions like, what was I doing then? What was I doing in the other way? And just to make sure it doesn't look creepy, like you can make it run the whole thing on your own system. So like you know for sure nothing ever leaves your system. And it's like even in an air gap system, like you have like, you're basically like becoming Orwellian on yourself, which is like somehow supposedly more acceptable, you know, depending on who you ask. So yeah, so basically like the idea is that like I showed you an app where you have Llama model, which converts image to text, then it goes to Mixtral, which is a text model, and it converts text to text. And the whole thing, open source, runs on your computer, doesn't need network, and is very fast. So the whole point of these matrix of possibilities is that when you have to think of these matrix of possibilities for building your own things, you don't want to think of them as like a single line. You want to think of them as a multiplication of these matrices. And if you multiply these matrices, theoretically, what you could see is like audio to text, and then text to video, and then video back to audio, and then blah, 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 blah. And then that way you have this very large chain. And this very large chain, like if you now think of it, now you have like an infinite number of possibilities of what you can do in this large chain. A lot of processes, a lot of things that people do in like day-to-day lives, like that seem like kind of like a grunt work automation. Think of like how you can map the matrix of possibilities to that grunt work automation, and then you can realize like, you know, people basically don't have anything to do. Which again, if you think about it that way, like I don't take the cynical philosophical outlook that like if AI takes away everything, what are we going to do? I don't think of it that way. I think that like human beings are fundamentally meant to do better things. So we want to solve the simple problems so that we can work on better things like art, beauty, whatever. But this is a tech conference and not a philosophy conversation. Anyway, so okay, some classic possibilities. You can generate epic stories. You can generate films. You can generate a complex narrative. You can try to make these kind of pipelines, self-correct, build some evals, build some methods to kind of like correct the mistakes that you're making. You can have a personal historian that like basically like you can hook up your Notion, Obsidian, Google everything, export the whole thing, run a model, leave it running for a couple days, and then you have a personal historian of everything you ever said. And then on top of it, you can fine-tune it. And fine-tuning, there's a lot of articles on fine-tuning out right now. Basically, the idea of fine-tuning is that you can essentially have a model that really does sound like you. So if you train it on me, it will say like literally like every 5 seconds. So something like that. It's just like it can have your tonality, it can have a talk like you, can have the knowledge of everything you've done. That would be kind of like a personal historian. You can use it for art, any kind of art, you know, depends on you. And then a universal scholar. So like if you're very interested in certain kinds of things, you can make models pertaining to those things. And it's you know, it really is not that hard. I think people make a big deal out of these things, but even with like no background in AI or like machine learning, you can just follow some tutorials like beep, 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 and then the whole thing kind of works in like an hour or two for you. So that being said, like I showed you like this large labyrinth of like all these models, right? All these models, and I obviously like because this is a demo and because like I'm taking your time, right? Like I obviously carefully cherry pick those models so that they work, right? I don't want to be embarrassed in front of you. So like, how do you know that if you pick a random model, like how do you even know that it's even a good model? Because there's just like apparently thousands, and any person can make their own and upload them. So there's like a few different methods which you can use to like figure out if the model that you're using is that a useful model. So one of them is like this ELO rating. ELO rating is like, if anyone plays chess, they're quite familiar with the ELO rating. So this is like an ELO rating for chess. And basically what they've done is like, every time like people ask a question on this leader website, they have like apparently like 300,000 something of chats. So like that's like a reasonable enough sample set that at this high like number of like condensation and throughput, you can figure out enough of a data set to make the argument that like, hey, this model is better than that one. And this is like basically human rated, so it's like a chess competition between different models. And oftentimes, like a lot of these models are like proprietary, but like every now and then we get models which will like straight up destroy them in like a specific domain, and those models would be open source. And you can train them and you can use them. So this is like a one standard way to like, is like check where they are on the ELO rating. The other way is like you can, depending on how much you care, that's how far you want to go, basically. So the other one is like human evals. So human evals is the idea that like there's a bunch of benchmarks, these like classic chat problems, which run as a sequence on like the entire model, and then the response of that is correlated with like an ideal response. So that is another way. Then you can read research papers. The thing about a lot of research papers and their conclusions is the lies. They lie a lot. So you got to be careful how much you trust the benchmarks. There's a huge history of like a lot of models trained specifically to beat the benchmark, but like not actually doing the real thing. So like, again, and the other way, this is like a more realistic one, is like a Hugging Face leaderboard. You go here, you see if a lot of people are downloading it, talking about something, like you see 2,000 likes or something. You know, famous is somehow correlated with good things. Not always, but like, you know, you can see this leaderboard, and that way you can figure out if the model is good. But which is the best way? Like, which is like actually the absolute best way to figure out what the model should be? Is the model any good? And the answer to that is like this. So this is a meme that like it flies like it's one of those things where like depending on the audience it really flies, and today was not one of those days, but like the idea behind this meme is that like if you see the midwit here, I can't believe I'm unironically explaining the midwit memes, but if you see the midwit here, he has these like 5 different like research benchmarks, which is like the standard way to do these things, and like the wise way to figure out if the model is any good is like just play with it. Like that's really just play with the model for 2 minutes. That's the best way to figure out if the model is right for you. So TLDR, just fucking try it. Just try the model. There's really I can't over-engineer this. All right. So enough with the demos. The demos were nice. You're aware that cool shit can happen. I've done some things that look nice on Twitter, but we also live in the real world, and you know, not the same thing. Okay. So from research to deployment. So now we know that these models exist, but like what if you have actual real problems that you actually want to solve at scale for like hundreds of thousands of users? And now there comes the good news that we have the capacity of being able to deploy and scale models at really high speeds. By high speeds, I'm talking like 500 tokens per second. So it could be something like, it's like what I said, everything in like this entire minute, like the entire minute of what I said could come in like 1 second. And you can think of 500 tokens as like 500 words per second. Like that will be the response speed of like these models that are deployed on these custom chips. And these custom chips are like specifically, purposefully designed just to speed up the responses on like these models. So even though I did prove my point by running these things on my computer, I think when you have to deploy these scalings at scale of like hundreds of thousands of users, I don't think that's very realistic that like you have a machine for these things every time. So there's quite a few deployment services. There's services like Fireworks, Grok. You know, you can use Google, AWS Bedrock, anything standard. There's like any cloud provider would more or less give you a service, and then depending on the model, you have to do this optimization, like which is the thing that fits you the best, which is the thing that fits with your contract. There's tons of open source tooling. There's like tools like Pydantic and Llama Index that make it much easier for you to build pipelines, and pipelines are things like which I showed you before. Take an image, do something on the image to make it to text to something else, then text to something else, blah, blah, blah. Like you go on and on and on. So you have open source tooling to like make these pipelines, and you have a lot of like deployment support from like very nice companies. You have to pay a lot, that's, you know, but if you're reading this, please do not deploy them yourself. It's too much work. I'm warning you, but some of us would not listen, myself included. But anyway, okay. But yeah, but who cares if it's open source, right? Like if you look at the ELO rating, like I showed you guys like this ELO rating before, if you see like a lot of these models are proprietary, like they're not really open source, right? And it kind of is counterintuitive if you think about it, that like I'm making this entire conversation of like open source AI, but like fundamentally, like, who really cares if it's open source, and why does it matter? Why does it really matter that AI be open source? Because like, if you look at the actual results of like which the best models are, none of them are actually open source. Not one of them. And I think the open source models are like a couple months behind in terms of the best models. And that brings a question of like, why do you have these things? And I think the idea is like, comes back to this old idea of democracy. Basically, you want there to be enough of competition that there's not this one singular AI overlord that like controls what you think. Because if you modulate the model to think a certain way, then if people interact too much with the model, they think like the model does, right? Yeah, so that's kind of an issue. You want to make things like cost efficient. You want to deploy flexibility, so you can deploy your own things on different vendors, whatever. You can improve things really, really fast, and you can do all kinds of like customization. You can have privacy. So if you're working in air-gapped environments, if you're working in compliant environments, credit card stuff, a lot of these environments would absolutely not let you use, like, not even a million years of these kind of large language models. So having open source AI is like, not just like, it has the traditional benefits of open source, like things developing faster, getting community support. But side benefits is like, you can have like these custom curtail solution just for you, which I highly doubt that the rich, big, powerful companies will do it for you. Unless you have like millions of dollars to spare, I don't think they'll bother with a lot of people. And that's just the reality of the game. And that's why like open source is really important. So to just give you a small summary, we have tons of cool models. We can iterate and prototype between them really fast. We can deploy them at scale. And we can do the whole process while still using open source that keeps your stuff really private. And that's the summary of my talk. But what if I need to do something for day-to-day stuff? And that's like the final thing, the final demo I want to show you. And that is so one of the things that really helps this open source project is basically, I work at SourceGraph, and one of the, SourceGraph is mostly an open source company, and one of the things that we've built that's really helpful is AI-based coding editor called Cody. So Cody can do a lot of cool things. It can like solve big code problems. Big code problems are basically things like reading through your entire code base, figuring out the most deepest nuance of like a random file among like, say, 300 or hundreds of files, and then figuring out the answer to that. So giving you a classic example, I don't have all the time I need to give you the full demo, but I'll give you a shorter one. So basically, this is like, say, this is the repository. This has like hundreds of files, and I just want to ask it like a simple question, which is like, so let's close it. There's a class, so what is the simple chat panel providers class? I made a mistake in the spelling on purpose. And the idea is that like, as you ask it a question, like it will go through the entire code base, find the most relevant files pertaining to the question that you ask, and then it will find it for you. So apparently it did. And this is, what is the simple chat panel provider class? So it looked at these files. So now it tells you, all right, so I went here to look at this file. And I figured out, so the top level, it contains action handlers, view updaters. It can have chat request lifecycle methods, web view components. And then on top of it, like you can ask it like literally anything about this file. So you can even go like explain what I said in Italian. And then hopefully it should do the thing in Italian. So this is like, the best thing about this is that like it's somehow a blend of like the best of open source world and the best of like, yeah, again, I can't vouch if the Italian is correct, but hopefully it is, because like, it should be. Anyway, so yeah, so the thing about Cody that's really good is that like, you can understand anything about your code base, no matter how big it is, and really, really fast using AI, and you have the benefit of the proprietary OpenAI world, open source world, which is like private contracts with big tech companies versus this completely like open source, I want to run everything on my own machine, air gap setup. You can do both of those things, and then you can like ask any kind of questions. You have obviously the standard benefits of anything pertaining to, say, like for example, anything that the Copilot does. So like let's say you want to do Fibonacci function. So you try Fibonacci function, and then if you do this, it will effectively write most functions for you in pretty much any language. It can answer any question for you and can search through very, very large repositories and be able to answer any of those questions for you. So that's basically how I want to think of these things. I want to think of like programming to be something that's like fundamentally changed with AI. And the way I think of like programming right now is that like I think we're at a point where we're somehow in like this is the levels of how I think of programming. So right now we're at a point where we're doing human-initiated programming, where the human is a person who writes the code, who does like some kind of autocomplete, some kind of search and response. That's like code creation, code completion. But eventually we'll get to a point where you'll come at a day where like, hey, I want to install a set of packages in Java, and every time I go through this, I have to go through this horrifying ordeal of like different PNPM packages, all that kind of stuff. So what do I do this thing? Like I say it in like simple English, it tries out like, it repeatedly tries out different packages until it gets the right answer that you're looking for. And that's like a supervised AI helping automated version where a lot of the grunt work that you do is automated by, like one person once said to me, like one of the reasons we made large language models and AI is so that we don't have to do regex. I believe that will be true. That like, and I think as an extension of that, like there will come a day where we don't have to do any kind of like grunt work with programming, and then just be like really, really fast, so that it will look like a day where every product person would be able to like build like prototypes really fast, even if they like can't like become like a full-blown programmer. And that's the world where I want to see, where I think people should be much faster than they are, and I think not adopting this leverage is like only shooting yourself in the foot. So it's kind of like autonomous driving. I think that's the future of AI. So my recommendation for the people here is that like in any form, whether it's through source graph Cody, whether it's through like, there's many other projects that help you hook in your code and your projects with AI. To the best of my knowledge, Cody is the only one that will support like fully air-gapped system, running on your own machine, completely private data and everything. And they can like really speed up your development, make you much faster, and help you build and prototype things really fast, and then build good software. So that's my advice to people. Try different things out. I have so many thoughts on AI. I live in San Francisco, so I like drink the Kool-Aid to the top. Like so I have a lot of things to say, but in the interest of time, I can't. So if you are interested in talking to me, I'll be heading out soon. But I have this. This is a photo of a ski town, but it's also my QR code. So if you scan this, that will be the place to my website. And whichever platform you deem fit is the platform you can use to contact me. And thank you so much.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you so much. So we have space for some question. If someone has some question. No, everybody are interested more in the QR code.
Oh, okay.
Because of the mountains. Perfect.
Full disclosure, this was also built using like AI.
I had a question. Among all the amazing things that you showed, when you were talking about the code running in your machine, like the historian, for example, how heavy it's on your machine, that kind of application?
So that's the thing, right? It can theoretically be much lighter. So if you can theoretically build a much simpler model that has the only purpose of like, it's called like a terminal helper. So any kind of like terminal issues you have with installation, running React, running front end, making sure like the classic issues of like this test is missing, that kind of stuff, you can curtail a model just to that one. And that model would run on some like a much simpler machine. Like even, I would dare to say even MacBook Air in like a couple months, or maybe even right now.
Okay, so it really depends on how you structure it.
It definitely depends on how you structure it. Like I have the cheat code of my laptop being M3 Max Pro. I get it, but this is not to say that this is the only model. And I'm running like much heavier models. I'm running like the corpus of the entirety of human knowledge. But for something as like the installation issues, you can use a much simpler model.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? or just we talk about skiing? Have you been skiing lately?
This is the first year where I didn't get a ski pass for the entire season, but like I go skiing all the time. Like I'm probably gonna go like in a backcountry or something this year.
Okay, maybe you can do something with the AI for skiing. I don't know.
This is
I don't know if it's still working. I don't know. So if there isn't any other question, I think we can go for another ride for another speaker. So thank you, Ira, for being here. And of course,
Thank you.
I'm giving you the trophy, the Shorty trophy. Be proud of it.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you.